So we need the flowers to line up. This situation is not going to work. Hey there lovelies, so welcome back to my channel. I'm Gail Sheree and I want to take you into my world for a bit. Today we'll be making a cushion. It's beginner friendly, so if you're new here, hi, hello, how you doing? Just look down there, you see a red button, click the subscribe button, give me a thumbs up if you like the video, and if you have been here, hello, what's a gwaan? Let's get into it. Let's start off with the equipment that you will need. Okay, you definitely need a scissor. However, I have a zipper that my mom had a long time ago. It's basically a scissor, but you would use battery and it cuts very straight, right? You also need a tape measure for length and any fabric that you can find. Ensure it is a size greater than 14.5 inches. You can have a smaller size cushion, but that was the size of my cushion for this DIY. Alright, so my scissor, I'm just showing you the one that I use. That red one that I have on the table does not work, okay? It does not work. Additionally, you will need either crayon or a chalk. You can use a pencil as well, but I recommend Taylor's chalk, right? So that you can easily remove it, you can wash it out of the fabric. As for me, I'm just going to make a small marking. The length, as I had said earlier, 14.5 inches, and my seam allowance is actually 0.5 inches. So if you're gonna have cushion that's, for instance, 20 by 20, your seam allowance can be 0.5 or 0.6, whatever you would desire. However, whenever I have done previous projects and my seam allowance was a little bit too short, maybe a 0.2, I end up having my cushions unravel, and I'm not going to have that this time. Okay, so always remember your seam allowance. Whenever I am sewing, I always like, well, whenever I am cutting, I always like to have a guide, so I use a ruler while cutting for precision. With the dimensions that I have for my cushion, 14.5 by 14.5, you would get a square. However, you can do any style, any shape. If you would like a triangle, a square, even a star, you can be creative as you like. It's just this video is beginner friendly, so that's why I went ahead and used a square. Alright, so we're gonna speed through the cutting and then I'll be right back with you lovelies, okay? Alright, so here we are at the sewing machine. You can use a needle and thread to put your fabric together and make your cushion. However, I am using a sewing machine, a Singer sewing machine. You can use any sewing machine you will like, that you have, that you're comfortable with, or you can use the needle and thread as I said before. Before I start sewing, I ensure that I thread my machine appropriately and there's no fuzz on the machine. I clean my machine. I also check if there's any old thread, and I also oil my machine, right? Just to make sure that I get the best out of my sewing machine. Alright, so when we're sewing the cushion together, you want to ensure that both of the brightest sides are facing each other. The brightest side of the fabric with designs or prints is the right side. If you're using a fabric that doesn't have a print, you can choose whichever side you would like to face each other before you start putting the fabric or the cushion together. After you have done that, you want to ensure that you leave a hole when sewing around the fabric. So you'd sew around the fabric and leave a section where you can pull that bright side outside so that you can get your cushion made. So now that we are able to have the bright sides together, yay! We would like to sew around the edges, alright, until we get to the hole. Then we can pull our cushion inside out. Whenever you are sewing, please remember to backstitch so that you won't have your cushion unraveling while you're sewing, okay? Right here, I thought I started to sew lean and I was actually sewing straight, but because I stopped the sewing machine, I had to just go ahead and pull out the short stitch that I created with a seam ripple and then just start over again. We're having fun, okay? We're having fun. Please remember to laugh. So sewing along your seam allowance, you have to remember how far from the edge you put that 0.5 or that 0.6 inch extra. You can use your tape measure and just make a marking on each sides to ensure that you are sewing along that length, right? You can also use pins, which I use at times, which is much easier to sew with. So you'll pull your pins out, but it will already have that 0.5 inch seam allowance, right? I also use my sewing machine presser foot, which I will show in a picture, so that I can sew straight. So I use it as a guide. Alright, so let's get into the sewing, alright? While I was sewing, I realized that my stitch was too small and my fabric was gathering together. So I went ahead and I adjusted some parts of my machine. I put the stitch to the widest stitch right here, and then I adjusted the tension to a medium low tension, about 1 or 2 on my machine, as I've shown right here. Right here, I'm showing you how to sew around the corner without having to stop the machine and take out the fabric and put it back again. You would sew to the end of the fabric, ensure that you keep your seam allowance, leave the needle in the fabric, lift the presser foot, turn the fabric or pivot the fabric to whatever direction you need it to go to, lower the presser foot and keep on sewing. Tip for the day. So I realized that I did not fully thread my machine appropriately. The second loop for my needle did not have the thread in it. Please do not make this mistake, because you would either get a misstitch or you won't have very nice stitch at the end of the day. So next time I'll pay attention to that. Alright, let's get back to the video. Right here, I'm just pulling my pillow inside out so that we can reveal our new pillow. Alright, then I'm going to go ahead and fill the pillow with sponge. I'll just basically speed through that part, and then I'm going to show how I sew the whole together. While I was sewing the whole together for the cushion, I realized that it's a little bit hard when you overstuff your cushion. So make sure that you pack your cushion with enough sponge, but remember, you have to sew it shut. You can sew it shut with needle and thread, that works as well, but I wanted it to be very secure, so I used my sewing machine, and you can see that I had a little struggle but I got it finished at the end. And I think the end product is beautiful. I had some other cushions that I created before, and I displayed it with the DIY cushion, and I think they're gorgeous. I think they're nice. I love it. I love the color combination, and you can go ahead and be as creative as you want. You don't have to make square cushions. You can do anything you feel comfortable doing. Alright, if you have made it to the end with me, thank you so much for being on my DIY journey. Well, this DIY journey. And if you're new here, I'm Gail Sheree, and I would love if you could like, share, and subscribe. And as always, bless.